The top 4 boards in round 9 of the British Championship were all drawn, but we don't have to go too far down the boards to find interesting chess. Hello, I'm Andrew Martin and welcome to the game of the day for round 9 of the 2015 British Chess Championship, coming to you live from Warwick University. And my game today is the exciting encounter between Grandmaster Mark Hebden playing white and FIDE Master Andrew Lewis playing with the black pieces. Now Hebden played slightly unusually for him in the opening, in that after knight f6 he went bishop f4. I've seen him play a kind of pseudo-London system before where he puts his knight on f3 and then his knight on c3 before bishop f4, but never bishop f4 at this point. But in fact what happened was that we quickly transposed back into a line of the Trompowsky opening known as the Vagan Gambit, where white offers black the chance to take on b2. Black takes up the cudgels, takes that pawn, and now beats the retreat, hoping to consolidate with his extra pawn over time. So far, everything is known, and now Lewis plays probably the most critical test, at least in modern times, of this variation, by blocking the centre with e5. And white must waste no time at all in this position trying to undermine that blockage, so f4 is the main line move. Black plays d6, and now we have an interesting point at which white has to make a choice. Now most of the Trompowsky books, at least in recent times, on this system have recommended the move f5. I know that there's a lot of material at a site called Chess Publishing on the internet written by Grandmaster Eric Prier on this variation, and I'm pretty sure there he gives a glowing tribute to this move f5. And the point of it is that white just wants to swamp black with pawns on the king side. So for instance, if black plays a quiet move like bishop e7, then white's going to go g4. And the idea is that actually it takes black so long to complete his development in this line that usually white gets tremendous initiative pushing those pawns forward. But at the current moment of recording, I think h5 seems to be a pretty tough nut for white to crack in this particular variation. So perhaps that's why, going back to Hebden Lewis, Hebden preferred just to settle for quick development instead of this gain of space with rook b1 first. The queen drops back, he opens up the f file by playing f takes e5, and then he brings his knight out to f3. Black plays bishop d6, not the greatest square for the bishop, but he's got to protect his pawn somehow. And now Hebden plays bishop out to c4. And so what we've got here is a genuine gambit by white, where he's given up a pawn. The centre is blocked, so this doesn't really help white in the quest for an attack. But at the same time, he's restraining black. And a4 is a move very much along those lines. White feels that as long as he can restrain black's pawn advances, especially this move b5, which is quite a key idea in this system, then he's going to be able to get an attack. So black plays knight bd7. I mean, black's a long way from consolidating this extra pawn, isn't he? You know, he's got a lot of pieces which he's got to find squares for, and that's not an easy task. So knight bd7 was played, Hebden castles. The nice thing about this gambit for white is you get a lot of easy moves, and you don't have to think too much about them. Your pieces come naturally to good squares. The only question is you're a pawn down, so where are you going to take it from here? Well, Lewis played knight to f8. A slow move, but he doesn't see any white threats. It turns out, actually, that black may be able to castle straight away. This was an old game of Czech Grandmaster Manuevering from Tarragona in 2007. And black is basically asking white to prove it. White played bishop g5 in this game. Black attacked the bishop and then unpinned. And I think white's pieces on the king side are tripping over each other. For instance, both white minor pieces, the bishop and that knight on f3, want to get to the square h4. So black can put up quite a tough resistance in this position. The game went knight d2, knight h7, queen h5, f6. Although white's shunting the pieces towards the king side, actually it's really tough to break down the black defence. And Manuevering went on to win this game in 41 moves. I've no doubt at all that both players were on their own here. I mean, Lewis, for instance, could not have expected that Hebden would play this. And he settles for this kind of passive move, but at the same time, white has to break through. So white plays knight h4. I think that's a very good move. And black plays h6 because, well, maybe white's thinking about bishop g5 here, pinning the knight on f6. So black stops it. White brings in the knight. Black surrenders his bishop. Rook takes f5. And now not only has white got f-file pressure, he's also hitting b7. So that's why Lewis just takes a little bit of time out to protect the pawn. Queen to e2. White still seems to be relying on development to see him through this position. But of course black's got some problems. Where does he put his king? I would have thought the king side is the safest place here. But Queen f3 was also an interesting move in this position. And the point of it is to sack the exchange. If black goes knight g6, then we're going to take on f6. G takes, queen takes f6. With really interesting compensation for the exchange. The main problem for black is, of course, where does he put his king? I mean, this is not totally clear. I presume Mark didn't do this because he felt his position was too good to have to sacrifice anything at this point. So that's why he played queen e2. And after knight 8 d7, continued to manoeuvre with knight to d1. Hebden likes, in general, restraining his opponent from active play. So after rook b8, it was no surprise to see him playing a move like rook b3. Just saying, well, you can't play b5 yet. Therefore, I'm just going to keep manoeuvring. The rook comes up to the third rank, presumably with the idea of some rook lift to the king side. And the pressure is still on black to unravel his position. Well, but Lewis continues to play well. He plays g6, knocking the rook away. And now bishop f8. Just getting that bishop off that very poor square on d6. I mean, what black wants basically is the knight on d6. So, I mean, he's probably preparing just to go bishop g7, castles, knight e8, knight d6. But, of course, that takes some time. The machine mentioned h5 in this position. And as we'll see in the coming play, that's quite a useful move for black to make because it stops the white knight from coming to g4. The point of putting the knight on g4 is to remove that defender on the f-file, open up the f-file, and then get down to f7. So bishop f8 was played in the game, and now Hebden plays a very interesting move here, d6. Sensing that, you know, unless he sacks something else, his initiative would evaporate, he decides to chuck another pawn onto the bonfire in order to keep the attack on the boil. And of course, that move opens up a line to f7. However, he could have been a bit more patient here. And knight f2, I think, knight f2 was another way. Threatening, as I said, knight g4. So if black stops it, then we go knight h3. And white's got a nice square on g5 to be able to use. But I don't know, as far as I recall from, I mean, I've played Andrew Lewis loads of times. He used to be a guy who gets into time trouble a lot. So maybe black's clock was, you know, ticking away at this point, and therefore Hebden decides to sack another pawn just to mix things up. So Lewis takes it. White goes rook d3. Now white's pieces are really activated to the maximum. Queen e7. And now what looks like a probable mistake here by Hebden, he plays knight e3. Very plausible move. Because, well, the knight's radiating activity there. It's threatening to come to g4, d5 as appropriate. But it turns out, when you run this through the machine, that knight c3 was a better move. It seems really important here to restrain b5 from black. And therefore, after knight e3, when Lewis played bishop g7, Hebden probably breathed a sigh of relief because he's actually missed his best opportunity, b5. I think black should have taken that opportunity. But maybe he couldn't calculate all the tactics. White's got various tactical opportunities here. And let's just see what they are. Well, firstly, if white takes this pawn, black clearly has to recapture. And now white tries to go in with a sacrifice. Bishop takes f7 check. King takes f7. And now the point is rook takes d7. If queen takes d7, we go knight g4. This is the tactical point of the whole line, with a double attack on e5, nasty fork, and f6. But it turns out here that black can just run the king away, and after king h7, white probably doesn't have enough. So going back to that variation one more time, let's just see b5 one more time. A takes b5, A takes b5. This time can white switch the move order and go in with rook takes d7. Then I think queen takes d7 is best. I mean, I think if he takes with the king, bishop takes b5 check renews white's attack. So queen takes d7. We plonk the knight in. He takes, we take. It looks as though there's some pressure, but once again, you know, when you analyse this with a computer, they're just absolutely ruthless. They say, well, it looks like you've got pressure, but in reality, what does it amount to? Rook h7, queen f3, and now the cold-blooded bishop d6. So I wonder whether b5 wasn't a better move. I mean, let's just run this one final time. b5, can white improve by taking on d7 straight away? And the point is that obviously if he takes with the knight, f7 is en prise. If he takes with the king, well, his king's exposed. So queen takes d7, rook takes f6. But of course this way round, white's bishop's en prise at c4. White can put his knight in. White's got really impressive pieces. But bishop g7. And the attack is running out of steam. If white takes on a6, black can land a check. And I think just simply castle. So was this Andrew Lewis's chance to actually win the game here? He misses his chance with bishop g7. So white goes a5. No further opportunity to play b5 and attack my bishop. Black castles. White goes knight g4. And now b5, a little bit too late. A takes b6. And now knight takes b6. Once again, running this through the machine, there were several opportunities for Lewis. Maybe he should have taken on g4 here. Dragging the white queen out, and now knight takes b6. I mean, he's probably afraid in his mind of this move, queen takes g6. But, of course, the bishop's en prise, and when white retreats the bishop, black's going to block the bishop out with gain of time. So maybe that was another improvement on black's play. Instead, maybe running short of time, I don't know, Lewis plays knight takes b6. Hebden takes on h6, thanks very much. Black takes it. White recaptures. And now probably black thought, well, he had to move his bishop on c4. I'm simply going to take that piece off. But it turns out that after bishop g5, rook b6, rook df3, the pressure's really on. And now this was the very last chance in the game for Lewis to improve on his defence. He tried queen d6. But he should have played the stunning move here, and quite a difficult move to find, knight d2. I'm pretty sure Mark wouldn't have missed that opportunity, but having come this far, you know, he's got to gamble perhaps that black doesn't find it. And I think this this helps black to survive, because, well, if white takes with the queen, the point is that black's going to take on e4. He can unpin aggressively there and put white in a fork. If white takes with the bishop, this of course gives black a little bit of breathing space. So he plays knight h5, bishop h6, knight g7. I mean, this is passive for black, but he's a pawn up and white's still got to find a way through. So that was it. I mean, that is the last chance. But again, perhaps if you're short of time, you don't find that move. It's as simple as that. So queen to d6 was played. Queen takes c4. And after this, Mark is in firm control of the game. And he basically shows no mercy. Black's got to vacate the f-file with his knight, and then in comes the cruncher, rook takes f7. And there isn't any way back from this move. So there are a few more moves where black gave a check, white put his king in the corner, black took the bishop, white took on f8, but it gets simpler now as the queen gets down to the back and forces a losing position for Lewis. Rook 8 f7, black resigned. So game of the day, perhaps not for total correctness, but certainly for great entertainment. And the jury's still out on this system where black blocks the centre with e5. Is it good for black or not? I know most people will prefer to play white because he gets a big initiative. But when you run this through the machine, things are absolutely not clear at all.